Football Savant podcast. As always, I'm your host, Travis Tyler, here to talk about some of the latest football news and talk about some of the games we saw on the field and stuff coming up this weekend. Today is Thursday, October 6th, 2022, and we're talking the NFL weeks 4 and 5 with Bud Masters of the Sports or Gibberish podcast. Bud, glad to have you on here.
Hey, it's good to be here, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So let's start with stuff on the field. We're about a quarter of the way through the season. Who has impressed you the most so far this season, whether it's a team or a player, or just who's been the most impressive?
Impressive. You got to go Philadelphia, in my opinion. I mean, it was funny that it just seemed like yesterday that they were criticizing Jalen Hurts on every show you watch, like on ESPN or NFL Network. They were criticizing pretty much everything the guy did, and they were talking about moving on. They should move on and everything. And then all of a sudden, winning cures everything. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's funny about football, man. Like, you can be on the verge of just your career being over or going to another team, being benched, and all of a sudden you win a couple games and everybody's like, he's fine. But I mean, definitely, he's playing really good. I've been putting him in my fantasy lineups and stuff. So I'm definitely got to go with Philadelphia on that. 100%.
Yeah, I had them down as my impressive team as well. They've, even in the games they've been close, they've been able to find the plays to win those games. And honestly, they haven't been that close, but the tough spots, the good teams fight through adversity, and the little bits of adversity that they've been able to get through. And like, to your point, I agree. Hurts has been a lot better than I expected, just overall as an NFL quarterback. And I think that's helped them a lot.
Yeah, it's just a good example that it's funny because in Cleveland, obviously you can see I'm a Browns fan. Yeah. A lot of times you rush to get the next guy or something, and it's like you see other teams that have a quarterback or a coach that struggles, and then all of a sudden they just stick with them. Like, and they were talking about Zach Taylor, for example. Then all of a sudden they go to the Super Bowl. So it's like, sometimes you have to let it just play out. Like, we went too many years of just coach after coach, 1 year coaches, and then like seemed like 1 year quarterbacks pretty much. And it was like they gave Jalen Hurts the chance. Now look at him.
Yeah.
So I mean,
looks like
proof's in the pudding. I mean, he's playing well right now. I mean, can it last all year? We'll find out. But I mean, as of right now, I wish we were 4-0. I would take their problems any day.
Yeah, I mean, so do 30 other teams. So,
right.
Speaking of quarterbacks that have been playing really well, Tua Tagovailoa was playing really well for the Dolphins in their 3-1 start, but now he's had those concussion issues and whatever the hell was going on there, and they ruled him out for this week, at least. Do you think they can continue to be as good with Teddy Bridgewater in there?
That's a good question, because Bridgewater, I was thinking about that just earlier today, and he's a serviceable backup. The days of him being a starter, I really don't see anymore. And I'm not saying he's not a good quarterback. It's just he could come in, he could win you some games. I mean, they got some nice pieces on the offense and stuff. So, I mean, it's possible, but for them to like overtake Buffalo, at the end of the season, win the division, I definitely don't see that if like he was in for the rest of the season. But I mean, he's a decent, he can win you. He's kind of like Jacoby Brissett for the Browns, but better. I would be more comfortable with him than Jacoby. But I mean, that's what I like about the NFL, man. Like, it's so fascinating to me, and it's my favorite sport of all time. And it's like, you bring in someone, because then you look at someone like Nick Foles years ago. I mean, he won a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? So it's like, you never know, because people go on a hot streak and everything. But like, with it being 4 games in, him going all but like, if he had to go like the rest of the season, I don't feel real comfortable with that. But like, if he played another game or two, he could win you like a game or two, depending on who you play. But long term, definitely not. I don't see him as the guy that could keep you going like into the playoffs and Super Bowl, anything like that. I just don't see him at that point. So Couple games, yeah. To answer your question, yeah, a couple games, but not long term.
Yeah, I think he's, he doesn't have that burst that he once had when he got
Yeah.
into the league. And then
Mm.
for, one of their concerns with all those speedy receivers was, can Tua get the ball downfield to them?
Yep.
Bridgewater doesn't have that arm that can get that down the field. He's short on a lot of throws and a little
Yeah.
inaccurate from what I've seen.
He's definitely one of those guys where if your quarterback goes down, because I've seen it many times at Cleveland, if he came in, I'd be like, okay. But again, that's for like the remainder of the game or maybe a week or two. And you'd be like, okay, that's fine. That's fine. But yeah, long term, I'd be worried. So
Yeah. So let's go to your Browns for a second. What that admittedly that Atlanta loss this weekend was shocking to me. I couldn't even believe the Falcons were in that one. What happened?
All right. Well, first of all, when I saw the schedule, I had us going 4-0, even with Jacoby Brissett, because our defense finished top 5 last year. We had like one of the best 3 offensive lines, and but I consider the best 1, maybe 2, but I mean maybe next to Baltimore because of Lamar Jackson and their running game and stuff. But I mean we were set. Like I mean Jacoby doesn't turn the ball over that much. He has 2 interceptions this year, but it was like basically the end of the game trying to make something happen. So I mean a lot of quarterbacks had that happen. Just trying to kind of chucking it up there and seeing what happens because you're desperate. But during the game, I mean he's not awful, but I mean he's no. Even Baker Mayfield had his ups and downs, but that game, man, like I went in thinking, okay, we're going to win this. But then you got the Jadeveon Clowney injury. You got the Myles Garrett injury. To me, especially when they ran the ball over and over and over and over and over. And I could keep going. Like I was yelling at the TV and my wife was like looking at me and I'm like, you don't understand how stupid this is. They ran the ball like 20 times in a row. Probably more. I can't remember how many they said, but it was something like playing a little kid in Madden and all they knew how to do was pick the one play and it was a run play over and over again. And what was crazy is we should have been the team doing that because we got Nick Chubb and, Kareem Hunt. And it's like they were doing that. And then after I was thinking about it today, it felt like we were playing in a preseason game and we rested our starters on the defensive line and we were playing against their starters. So there was like a second string defensive line in there. I mean, it was just bad. So the presence of Myles Garrett being gone, I mean, that definitely didn't help us. But I mean, Atlanta didn't give up. And the funny thing is Mariota didn't even throw the ball that much. I forget.
9-17. I think
yeah.
I saw.
I mean, how terrible is that?
Yeah,
how terrible is that?
You don't usually win with the quarterback playing that way.
Terrible. It was just one of those, and I feel bad for Nick Chubb because dude will have amazing games. Like a couple weeks ago against the Jets, he had 3 touchdowns, and you still lose. I mean, come on, man. So I mean, Atlanta. I mean, you gotta give them credit. They seen it was working. They ran the ball over and over again. If it was the flip side, the Browns ran the ball like 20 times in a row and we kept getting first downs and was scoring, I would have been excited. But
yeah.
Seeing it from this point of view, man, oh my God, I was yelling at my TV. It was bad. But again, if Jadeveon Clowney, Myles Garrett would have been in the game, would have been different. So it's one of those things about football. Again, I love football because just the absence or presence of sometimes one player can make a huge difference.
Exactly. You get those 2 guys in, there's not as much room on the field for that guy, or for, what was it, Algier that was running off?
Man, it felt like they put the water boy in at one point. That's how bad it was. It's like, good Lord, are they going to stop anybody? Like, I mean, it was rough. It's hard, man. Like, especially when you got people texting you on group chats from our show, and it's like, 3 of them are Bengals fans, and I'm the only Browns fan. It's like, oh, it looks like Atlanta's going to win. I'm like, yeah, man, thanks. Like, thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah. As a Detroit fan, I feel your pain. We've been there many times.
Hey, we share something in common. Then the 0-16 season.
Yeah, that was brutal. I was living in New Jersey at that time, so I had to deal with Jets and Giants fans during that. Those are never fun to deal with too much, but
yeah, that's right.
Especially when that's happening to you.
Terrible.
So about those Bengals, what do you take away from their win over Miami?
I really, honestly, not just because I'm a Browns fan. I'm trying to be fair, and I really am.
Yeah.
But to me, you look at the Jets game first, and it's like, okay, well, they beat the Jets. We didn't, but still, I mean, it's the Jets, And then they come in, and I thought they were going to lose to Miami. And as soon as Tua went down, I was like, okay, well, they're going to win and they're going to celebrate and everything. But it's like, I think if Tua would have played, they could have pulled off the victory and they would have beat the Bengals. But then looking forward on the rest of their schedule, the Bengals can easily win a bunch of games in a row, but then they have some tough ones, man. So I'm not sold on the Bengals until they can beat the Chiefs again this year. They got to beat Buffalo. They got to beat the Ravens again. So, I mean, they got two teams, one with actually both teams they played backup quarterback. So, I mean, again, we didn't beat the Jets, but they did. But still, I mean, come on, man. Don't start saying, oh, we're going back to the Super Bowl and stuff until you do something a little bit more impressive than beat the two teams with backup quarterbacks. I mean, you beat Baltimore this Sunday, then I can see, yeah, the Bengals are back, but they got to beat them.
Yeah.
Okay. It's too early to crown them champs again.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the surprising nature that they did last year, coming from what, 4-12, 3-13, whatever it was.
Well, and what's funny is like, and I mean, I wouldn't be complaining if it was the Browns that did it, but what was funny is some of those games that took them to the Super Bowl were decided on a field goal. So, I mean, it literally could have went the other way. So, I mean, it's like Joe Burrow, after the first couple games, it was after the Dallas game, they put a post up on Facebook, and it said that he was on track at that point after week 2 to get sacked 111 times. I mean, so that's what I'm saying, man. When we get in some games down the road against like a Buffalo and that defense, if you win that game, okay, it's okay. I'll admit you guys are
take it away.
Great, But until then, man, you just beat two teams of backup quarterbacks. I'm not ready to crown you guys champs.
Yeah, and I think I think it was the first round playoff game last year against Vegas. He got sacked 9 times. And Terrible. Then the Tennessee game, Tannehill literally handed them the game with that throw. It was just right into field goal range at the last minute. Otherwise, who knows what we're talking about in terms of the Bengals right now.
Exactly. But that's football. And again, that's why I love the sport, man. Like it could literally come down to a field goal, a last second Hail Mary. I mean, there's so many situations and people sometimes that don't watch football. It's like, I don't like it and I don't get it. And I don't understand why you get so emotional. It's like, dude, I mean, there's just so many things that could happen and you never know from week to week. The underdog, the team that everybody's saying, oh, they're going to win or lose, and then they end up winning. I mean, it's thrilling, especially if it's your team. And it's like, well, Cleveland has no chance against the Chargers Sunday. Okay, well, we have Brissett in that. Okay, whatever. But if our defense plays well enough and offense has a good game plan, we could beat the Chargers this Sunday. So, I mean, that's the thing. Like, you never know. And I mean, but back to the Bengals,
did some damage there. So
yeah. And Herbert has some bruised ribs and stuff. So I mean, who knows? I mean, I'm not saying cheap shot him, but if you get a good enough shot on him, he could leave the game. And then all of a sudden, we're playing a backup quarterback. So I mean, but the Bengals, they all toot their horn about how great they are and all this stuff. It's like, dude, you guys lost to a backup quarterback in Dallas. Okay, you should have won that game, I felt. And then it's like you beat 2 teams in a row with backup quarterbacks. I mean, come on, you haven't done anything impressive this year. So yeah. Wait, now again, if they beat the Chiefs, they beat the Bills, they beat the Ravens twice again this year, then I could see. But this is week 4, and you just beat 2 teams you should have beat. So I'm not ready. I'm not ready to put the AFC champion on your resume again this year.
How about a couple struggling teams in the AFC South? The Colts and Titans kind of off to a rough start. Which, most people would consider them the top 2 teams in that division. Which one of them do you think is in better shape to actually take that division?
Well, it's funny because I pulled out some papers that we did on our show, and we put who we thought each team would win the division, for example. And 3 out of 4 of us picked the Colts to win the division, and the 4th guy picked the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
And I was a believer in Matt Ryan. Like, he might come in and like have like at least 1 year, his first year, like he feel rejuvenated. I got a new team, and it could be like something the Colts needed because they had a nice offense last year and a running game and a couple receivers that were playing nice. And it's like, oh, okay, you got Matt Ryan, a better quarterback. You went up, I mean, even though he's at the end of his career, I mean, who knows how much longer he'll play, but I was excited for him, because I mean, they're not in my division, so I could root for them. And then you have the Titans, and it's like, well, Derrick Henry. So, and then they got rid of a couple players on offense, and it's like, well, how's that going to play out? But seeing the 2-2 start is kind of surprising for the Titans. I thought they'd be at least 3-1. The Colts 1-2-1. That's most surprising to me because I didn't think that it would be that bad. I kind of right at this point I thought they'd be at least 2-2. At least 500 right now. But Jacksonville 2-2.
Yeah, I mean, that was impressive. I didn't have that at all.
Yeah, I mean, they're tied for first place in the division. So, I mean, it's crazy because we all had them at last place in the division.
And then,
it's just funny.
Yeah, Doug Peterson's done a great job with that. But then also with Indy, I don't think anybody expected Jonathan Taylor to struggle as much as he has this year.
Yep. And you're looking at a guy that does like fantasy football and like in leagues and stuff. And then I'll do things like FanDuel. And every time, man, I say, okay, I'm going to pick a guy like this. And he ends, he had a great season last year. Excuse me. And then this year, it's like, I pick him. Where are you at? What happened to last year, man? Are you only doing this to spite me? Like, why are you? I don't get it. So, I mean, it's surprising, man. Like, I don't know if it's, if you want to blame the offensive line for not opening the holes for him, if I don't want to say lost a step already because I mean he's still young. Yeah. So I mean, but what the heck? What the heck is happening? And another player, real quick. So I don't know if you would mention him or not, but another player that we mentioned just Tuesday of this week was Joe Mixon. Same thing. Like, dude is not hitting the holes. He's averaging like 3 yards a carry, and it's like, what the heck is up with the running backs? But I can say Nick Chubb right now is only like less than 10 yards away from being it's like Saquon Barkley and then Nick Chubb, and it's only within like 8 yards or something difference between them. So Nick Chubb.
pretty good rushing attack there. I think for in terms of Mixon, a little bit of that can go on the Cincy O-line just because it's the Cincy O-line. For Taylor, I think it's more of teams expect him to get the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And so until somebody else proves that they can bring offense to that team, they're just going to keep stacking the box.
Yeah, and it goes back to, like, I'm sure you've heard it many times over the years, is you have to establish the run to set up the pass. But in this situation, I think Matt Ryan might have to do the passing game a little bit better than what he's doing, so he could set up the run. Because right now, I mean, you stack the box because you don't believe in Matt Ryan. The defense is probably looking at him like, well, he's at the end of his career. He's not going to burn us. He's not going to hit us like a 60-yard bomb or something. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it's only week 4, man. So, I mean, they could get it together. I mean, he could have a burst of just 150-yard games the next several weeks. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you don't know. But as of right now, I would say more for both him and Mixon, probably offensive line. If I had to put a pointed finger at someone, I would say it has to be offensive line more than them as a talented player.
Yeah, and the Colts have been a bit of a late season team under Frank Reich as well. So surprising start, not as surprising, I guess. We've talked a lot about AFC teams, so I'm going to jump over to the NFC. All right, so we had the game in London, came down to that field goal, the double doink off the uprights and off the crossbar.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Saints Minnesota ended up winning off that. The Saints were missing a lot of their offensive players. How much of a difference do you think that could have made in this game?
What's funny, if you look at the Minnesota side, Minnesota is one of those teams that you really don't know what you're getting from week to week.
Yeah.
I mean, you really don't know what you're getting. So to say if the Saints were 100% healthy, I think they could have won. But that's really one of those games, man, that, like, you never know what you, especially Kirk Cousins. You don't know what you're getting with Kirk Cousins. He's the kind of guy, and I swear to you, I'm glad that he is not a Browns quarterback, because I would be in the hospital every other week from high blood pressure, because the guy can come out, he could throw 3, 4, 5 touchdowns if he wanted to, and have a perfect rating, and then next week come out and throw 1 touchdown and 6 interceptions, and it's like, I mean, you really don't know what you're getting with them. So I mean, the Saints, with who they had Sunday, could have beat the Minnesota Vikings. You know what I mean? So it's like, if they would have been at full strength, they definitely would have, I think, could have won that game. But I think that had more to do with Minnesota, because they just happened to catch them on a week that they were playing better.
Yeah. I thought going into that game, the jet lag could get Minnesota, because they're not fast starters over here either. So.
Yeah, they actually say, I've heard a lot of players say that's a real thing. Like, it's hard to go from one, like East Coast, West Coast sometimes, because the playing hours difference and everything. And then I can imagine going overseas and being hours either behind or ahead, and then try to get used to that, and then go out there and playing. But I think it had more to do with Minnesota than them not having the certain players on the Saints. But now watch next week. I guarantee it. They're going to come out. Minnesota's going to play, and they're going to lose, and Kirk Cousins will be terrible. I'm telling you, it's like every other week, man. Every other week,
because they're playing the Bears. So in that NFC East, we've seen the Eagles being really good, the Cowboys somehow staying afloat with Cooper Rush at quarterback, the Giants even off the 3-1 start, even they're running what I think on NFL Network this morning they described it as a JV offense. So, but the team that's really not producing on offense is the Commanders. What do they need to do to put some energy into that offense and show some life at least?
Oh my God. I don't have an answer for that, man. I really don't. Like, I wish that we played them this year, because I could probably just check that up for a win. But they're one of those teams. So so it's like, looking at the standings right now, I have them in front of me. Like, I actually see, I would say that they're probably going to be the first pick in the draft next year. That's just my honest opinion. So, I mean, and we got probably, last I heard, they were predicting at least in the first round anywhere from 4 to maybe up to 6 or 7 quarterbacks coming out in that first round. So, I mean, if they are in the top 3 picks, which I'm telling you now, I think they're going to be last this year and first in the the draft. And I think that you got a good quarterback. Have to. Just no ands, ifs, or buts. You got to get a quarterback. And I think if you get the right quarterback, he could come in, change the culture for him, and and just, you need somebody exciting, not just on the field, but somebody off the field to be like, hey, man, like, I'm here. I'm going to do my best for this team, this city, this organization, and all of a sudden give some life to the crowd, and people are excited again. But until you get that quarterback, man, like, it's just not happening right now. I mean, I don't think there's anything they could do. I mean, they don't have anybody on the roster, that they could put in that could be like, oh, I'll rejuvenate this offense. It just ain't going to happen. So, I mean, I think this is just a wash year for them. And next year, I'm telling you, I think they're going to be the number 1 pick in the draft next year.
Yeah, I think they were hoping Carson Wentz could kind of be that kind of guy, and he hasn't been, from what I've seen, he hasn't been terrible, but he hasn't just moved the needle at all on that offense.
Yeah, and it's sad when you look at him, because it's like, he had that, I think it was 11-0 start in Philly. Yeah. The year they won the Super Bowl, he gets hurt. Someone else comes in, wins the Super Bowl, and then that was it. Yeah. Can't help but feel bad for the guy. I mean,
he was on a tear at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, you can't help but feel bad. And it's like, wow, I went 11-0. Oh no, I'm hurt. Oh no, someone else won a Super Bowl, and then he finally comes back, and it's just, he's just one of those guys that gets hurt, and when he comes back, he's not the same. I mean, look at RG3 when he played for Washington. Well, I mean, so he got hurt, then it was just like, well, that was it. Yeah. So he bounced around. So I think Wentz is at the point of his career where he's going to be a backup kind of like a Teddy Bridgewater type situation. He
Yeah,
might
I
be
can
able to
see
come
that.
in and win a game or two for you. But after this year, I just don't see him as a starter anywhere, unless someone was really desperate and there was like a week 1 injury next year or something like that, and they need somebody right away. But other than that, man, like, I hate to say it, but I
Yeah.
think Washington needs to get a quarterback in the draft next year and just move on from Wentz.
Yeah. Would you rather have Wentz or Geno Smith right now?
It's Geno Smith. It's funny to say that because when
Yeah.
and I love football. I follow football literally 7 days a week. Like I read
Yeah, me
everything there
too.
is about football. I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. But what's funny, he was one of those names I forgot about. So when he actually was in the running there for who was going to be the starter for the Seattle Seahawks, I was like, oh my God, I forgot he was even in the league.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
like, because you don't hear about him. And now all of a sudden he's playing in Seattle like Russell Wilson should be playing in Denver. I mean, it's
Exactly.
crazy to
Yeah.
think, like, wow. And, the fans, I could just imagine being a fan saying, great, we got rid of Wilson. Here comes freaking Geno
Geno
Smith.
Smith, yeah.
And now you're like, Geno Smith.
To be fair, he was playing the Detroit defense on Sunday. So
Yeah. I don't know if you were going to mention or not, but can you believe that right now into the first 4 weeks, the Detroit Lions have the first number 1 ranked scoring offense, and then they have the absolute worst defense, like ranked. They're number 1 and number 32.
Yeah, that's how it goes. That's how it's
freaking
been.
funny.
But like anytime there's a good offense there, it was like the beginning of Stafford's career. He didn't have a good defense till like his 7th year in the league, and then they got crappy again. And so yeah, and that's just the way it goes. They always have one unit that's way better than the other, and lately, for the past, I don't know, 20 years at least, their defense has just been god awful. No matter, I feel like every season they're like, oh, they're on their way to setting a new a new record high for points against them in a season and yardage.
I think it was one of the funny clips that they show often. I probably see it at least a couple times a year. It feels like was the I think it was it Dan Orlovsky that ran out of bounds in the end zone, and then
we lost that game by 2 points. By the way,
yeah, it's like okay, I see that
16 year and we lost by 2 points because he ran out of the back of the end zone.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was. I was glad to see Jimmy G do that on Sunday night the other night.
Yep,
somebody else did it.
I don't know if you saw his
reaction.
I was trying to picture. I've seen someone else do it, and I couldn't remember offhand who it was. But yeah, you saw the defender immediately go, safety.
Yeah. Oh, it was. I think for Orlovsky, it was Jared Allen on the Vikings. Yeah. All right, let's go one more question about the NFC for last week before we go into next week's games. The Packers on Sunday seem to have the most production from Aaron Jones. I'm not sure they've been leaning on him as much as they should this year. Do you think they need to make him more of a focal point in that offense?
Definitely. I mean, what was funny, and we've kind of joked about on our show, was Aaron Rodgers, is all the Willie Woney comeback thing. And then it's like, okay, I'll come back. And then he signs the contract. And before the ink dries, it's like, okay, we're going to trade your favorite target, Devontae Adams. It's like, and then he's stuck with these guys he has no chemistry with. So, I mean, it's stupid not to try to get the ground game going, and it's like, you have a guy that's a pretty good back. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I've seen him on my fantasy team get points for me and stuff. So, I mean, it's not like he's trash. I mean, why not give him the ball and then, even set up the play action with them? I mean, it's just a mess, man. I'm glad I'm not almost a Buccaneer, sorry, a Packers fan right now, because I would be so furious that we got the quarterback. Okay, we got him. Wait a minute. You're getting rid of our receivers. What the heck is going on? You know what I mean? So, I mean, you need the running game, and I don't understand why you don't rely on it a little bit more, because, like I said, I mean, he's a good back.
Yeah.
It's just a mess, man. And I thought Cleveland was a mess, but there's actually other teams out there that's a big mess right now. And there's like that right there would have been enough for me to be like, okay, man, like, I feel betrayed because you didn't tell me ahead of time that you were going to trade everybody away once I signed with you. But I mean, you got to get something going, man, because Green Bay is not going to, if they make the playoffs, I don't see them doing anything because, I mean, if you don't get the running game going, everybody's just going to stay back in coverage. I mean, they don't trust the run. You're not going to run the ball. So why not just cover a couple receivers and then send a rush? Bam, we win. So, I mean, you got to get the running game going now. I mean, if not, I mean, sorry, Aaron Rodgers came back.
Yeah, and then the backup AJ Dillon's pretty good himself. So I remember watching that game on Sunday, and I think it was the 3rd and 1 or something, and they faked a handoff to Dillon up the middle, and he went ahead for good 4 yards without the ball, and they decided to throw the ball. And I was sitting with a friend of mine who was a Packers fan, and he was screaming at them for not running the ball. And so I think they're a little too reliant on that passing game that hasn't really shown too much this year.
I mean, I understand you have Aaron Rodgers,
exactly.
and he's a Hall of Famer. I understand that, but you don't have Devontae Adams anymore. You know what I mean? So it's like you have to do something, man. Like, because it's not going to last way down the road. I mean, it's not going to last. People, it's going to, like I said, they're just going to fall back in coverage and then send a rush, and then we don't have to worry about the run. We got Rodgers. All we got to do is contain Rodgers. I mean, it's a mess, man. Just run the ball. And I mean, with Cleveland, I mean, a lot of our success came from running the ball. And there's times where Chubb or Hunt will get stuffed. But as the game goes on, man, just keep running the ball. The defenders are getting tired. Nick Chubb, I think it was 2020 in the fourth quarter, he was averaging a little over 10 yards a carry in the fourth quarter. That means literally every time in the fourth quarter, because defenses ran down and tired, that every time you gave him the ball, he got a first down. I mean, so why not try the pound game? Just pound away. Just hand the ball. It don't work. Just keep doing it, man. Eventually, they're going to get tired, and they're going to break one. And you got the 1-2 punch with both of them. So, I mean, why not try? I mean, at least try. I mean, what's the harm in trying? I mean, I mean, it's early still in the season. It's only going into week 5. You at least come out and say, hey, we're going to have more run plays this week. See what happens. I mean, what else can you do? I mean, like I said, I mean, teams are going to just look at it and be like, well, they're not a running team, so who cares? Let's just, we're going to go after the receivers and maybe do a double coverage here or there, and we don't have to worry about the run. So, I mean,
play a lot more nickel.
Right. I mean, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you got to do something, man. I mean, it's definitely not working in there. I mean, I don't see them, if they make the playoffs, because I don't know. I mean, it's weird saying if, because it's Aaron Rodgers, but if they make it, I don't see them. I give them maybe the first round and they'll get knocked out. I mean, that's just my personal opinion.
From watching that division, I think they still win the division this year, but it's definitely closer than it's been in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings, they're tied with the Vikings 3-1. Bears are 2-2. I don't see the Bears or the Lions doing anything, but it would just be funny to see Minnesota win the division with Kirk Cousins. I mean, it would just, I would laugh at that. I'm sorry.
Minnesota did stomp them in week 1, so I guess it's possible. But I've been, slim margin a little bit. I give a little edge on the Green Bay still there.
Yeah, that's why I was saying, like, it's hard to say if because of the division. But I mean, if teams can know that they don't have to stop the run and they're not trying to run, it's going to be hard for them to win games. I mean, that's just that's just my opinion, man. I really think it would be funny to see them be second in the division at the end of the season to Minnesota. A lot of people would find that comical.
It's been so long since they haven't won the division, so it's like.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and Aaron Rodgers isn't a spring chicken either. I mean, he's one hit away from not coming back. So
that wouldn't be good for them,
right? Yeah, I mean, it'd be rough.
So let's jump ahead to what's coming up this weekend. Is there a game or multiple games that you're looking forward to seeing that are on that schedule?
Well, we do our picks of the week, so I got my little cheat sheet here. One game that's interesting to me off the top of my head would be Philadelphia, Arizona. Kyler Murray, Dallas versus the Rams is interesting because of the quarterback situation there in Dallas, and one
The
other
Rams
game
aren't
I
playing
would
too well either.
right. Oh yeah, it's
They
great.
got to play that defense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's rough, man. Because I mean, I kind of knew they'd have a Bowl hangover maybe at
Yeah.
first, but they're playing a lot less ball than I thought they would. Like it's kind of surprising. But the main game I'm looking forward to, I would have to say, I have two for you. Pittsburgh versus Buffalo. I expect Buffalo to win, but Kenny Pickett, I'm looking forward to see how he plays. And then the other game is the Cincinnati Baltimore game.
Yeah. I had Dallas and LA and Cincinnati and Baltimore on my radar for this weekend. I think
because we mentioned it earlier. If the Bengals can beat the Ravens again, they stomped them last year twice, so it's like this year if they come out and beat them again, then I could say, okay, you got 3-game winning streak. I mean, that's okay, that's cool. You beat Baltimore, because Baltimore, it's funny, they've been putting points up on the board, but then the defense blows it. So it's like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if they can get the Burrow and like just get him off his game, I think they have a shot of winning this game. But that I would say is the two games, I should say, that I'm looking forward to the most, because I don't know, man. I picked Baltimore to win the division, and I want Baltimore to win because I know too many Bengals fans and they talk trash. So any other game, I want Baltimore to lose. But yeah, I think that one, and the got to go with the Philly Arizona one. I think those are the two. If I could watch any game other than the Browns, those are the two games I'd probably want to watch.
Yeah, I think the Philly Arizona one is really intriguing with the potential of the offenses in both of that one.
Because Kyler Murray is another guy that you don't know what you're getting from week to week.
Exactly. He could have a really bad game, or he could look like an MVP. There's really no in between with him.
And see, another thing too is there's teams that start out hot all the time, it seems like. So you want to see Philly, if they're legit, you want to see them win this game, because it's like, okay, now you're 5-0. Okay, then you look at their schedule down the road, and it's like, okay, well, Philly, Dallas is going to be very interesting. And then Philly, even New York Giants is going to be interesting. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's always that one team every year that starts out hot, and it's like, can they keep that going? So that's why I'm interested in that, saying, okay, well, if Kyler Murray plays a really good game, that's going to be an interesting game, because, I mean, who's going to come out on top? So that's why I'm looking at that. And then, like I said, the Ravens Bengals, man, I don't know any Ravens fans, so it's easy for me to say I hope they beat the Bengals, because I can come on the show and be like, ha ha, well, sorry, guys.
the trenches are going to be big in that one, because Cincinnati, especially the pass rush, Baltimore's pass rush win rate I was looking at isn't that great, but Cincinnati's like third to last in pass blocking or something like that.
Yeah.
And run blocking is a lot different. Like Cincinnati's like 12th and Baltimore's like 10th run defense. So that, according to the stats I saw, so that could be very interesting matchup in that one.
That's one of those games that if the Bengals defense isn't prepared, I think Lamar Jackson will have a huge running game, and I could see easily getting over 100 yards. And the biggest thing for me for that game is if they can protect Joe Burrow. That's the big issue there, because the first two games of the season when Burrow was getting hit, I mean, look at the outcome. So if
throwing around
they,
like a rag doll.
Yeah, so I mean, if they could come in and get him off his game, I think it'll come down to the offensive line and the defense for the Ravens. So I mean, that's the biggest matchup, I think, to be honest, because if they can protect Joe Burrow, I think they got a shot. I mean, that's their number one thing. But then again, we mentioned Mixon. If Mixon doesn't average more than 3 yards a carry, then Baltimore is going to be able to say, well, okay, all we got to do is double Jamar Chase and have a couple rushes here and there, just throw in a couple blitzes and get him off his game. And I mean, I think they need to move on from Mixon. I'm just going to say that.
Okay.
So that's just my thing. I don't know. I hope they don't because
this year. So
I hope they don't because we play him, and I'd rather go up against a guy that's getting 2 to 3 yards a carry. Yeah. So, I mean, I hope they keep him for 10 more years.
How about, is there a team that needs a win the most this weekend?
If I had to pick one, I am going to go with obviously the Texans. They don't have a win, but one team I think that really needs a win is the Carolina Panthers.
Okay.
And not just because I used to like Baker Mayfield, but it was funny. I saw on it they had the coach was like talking, and he was gave one of those messages where it's like, I'm not saying it's because of the quarterback, but I'm saying it's because of the quarterback, because he made little comments like Darnold being hurt and stuff like that. And when you read between the lines, it just came off as he was saying, if Darnold was healthy right now, we would replace Baker Mayfield. That's how it came off to me. And a few other, I'm not saying I'm an expert, but other people I've heard that were experts were saying the same thing. Like, that don't sound good for Baker. So if anybody needs a win this week, it's the Texans and Baker Mayfield. So, I mean, if he comes out and wins, plays a good game, I think it'll settle it down a little. But if he loses again, man, I'm telling you, like, Baker's going to be a backup somewhere.
Yeah. Carolina definitely needs a win, especially with Matt Rule's situation.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably going to be coaching in college next year, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's the Saints. They're 1-3. People had them projected as a wild card team.
Yep.
They haven't really. I don't think they've played a fully healthy game yet. So they need to get all those players together, and they can't. They're already down to the last place in the division. A 1-3 start is not good for anybody. 1-4 would be absolutely awful for them, especially first year without Sean Payton. That might start sounding the alarm on the Dennis Allen era already.
Well, yeah, it was funny because when they started picking up all these pieces, they got like Jarvis Landry, which is still a decent, slot receiver, and because I wish we still had him. And then they got a couple. They got a receiver in the draft. They just picking up pieces, here and there, and all of a sudden you're looking at it, and even on NFL Network through the draft and everything, they were all saying like, "Man, the Saints are going to be a sneaky good team. Like they're picking up pieces left and right." And it's like, you look at it and it's just one of those things like Philadelphia years ago when they had the dream team, and then look what happened. But man, like I was excited for the Saints, to be honest with you. I mean, I was looking at all these pieces and was like, wow, they got a nice receiving core now. And I mean, it's like you look at it and like you said, the record, and you're like, huh. Like, wow, okay, well.
They're worse than Atlanta right now by record.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy to think and I mean, I've seen it a million times with Cleveland. Like when we got OBJ for the first season going in, oh my God, I was screaming like when we first got him, like, oh my God, we got OBJ, oh my God, because Baker really wasn't that bad. I mean, I'm looking at it with Browns goggles on, but like. Yeah. He was a decent quarterback. He was the best we've had since '99. So I mean, he helped change the culture there for the last 4 or 5 years in Cleveland. So it's like putting him with OBJ. I was so excited, and it's like it was the same thing with the Saints this year. It's like we're getting all these pieces, and then you come out and you don't make the playoffs or anything in that first year, and you're like, well, what the heck? Like we got the best offensive line in football, arguably the best running game in football. And it's like, what the heck happened? So, yeah, I mean, the Saints are at that place, and it's like, it's crazy to think like one injury can just offset the whole season sometimes, depending on who it is. And then, I mean, all of a sudden, all these pieces, like all these receivers and stuff, and it's like, well, crap, we got all this talent. What the heck's wrong? And like you said, the Saints, they get rid of their coach. Well, not get rid of, but you know what I mean? It's they have a new coach, and it's like, automatically, if I was a Saints fan, I wish we still had Sean Payton.
Yeah.
And it's like, and another thing with the quarterback situation, I'm sure is like, as soon as the quarterback plays bad, you immediately start hearing the chants of the backup quarterback. And it's like, there's so many things. It's just frustrating, man. Like I can look at it at a team like the Saints right now, and I feel their pain because I've been there since the 80s watching Cleveland in these same situations. And it's like, how can we have this much talent? We had our running game with OBJ and all them, and it's like, how? I don't understand. I just don't understand. But yeah, I mean, Saints, man, they got time to turn it around, but you got to do it now. Like you need to do it now, or it's just you're going to have all that wasted talent. Jarvis Landry ain't going to be there next year, I'm sure. Especially if they have a terrible, I mean, if they have a terrible season, they're not going to bring him back. So I mean, but yeah, I mean, the Saints are just one of those teams I thought would be way better than what they were this year.
Yeah.
Surprising start.
For me, I've never been too impressed with Jameis as an NFL quarterback, just because the turnovers. He did throw for the 5,000 yards, but there are also 30 interceptions in that.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yeah. It was funny to think that he threw over 5,000 yards, like, and it 30 interceptions. That's insane, man. Yeah. It's like that is such a, like, you can't even, like, I can't think of it, man. Like I can't, it can't even like get my brain to really grab a hold of that. Like 30 interceptions and you got 5,000 yards. Like, what? But when Winston, it was funny. He came in and everybody was like, well, he's going to play well this year. And I actually was one of those people like, well, he might have, his career might take off now. They got, new offensive weapons and stuff, and they can have a nice year, second in the division, but no.
Wasn't that 5,000 yard season like the one right before he was like, hey, man, I can't see. I need contacts.
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
funny.
Yeah, we always joke about that because it's just like, well, you've been playing quarterback in the NFL for 5 years, and now you're telling us to see.
After the 30th interception, like, hey, man, he all nonchalant to the coach and doctors, be like, hey, man, I think I need context.
Yeah, he's just throwing the ball up there like, screw it, there's some red color down there.
I see a shape downfield. I'm hoping it's an offensive player. I'm just going to wing it.
Yeah. Let's get into some of the specific games for this weekend now.
All right.
Like you mentioned, we'll start with the game you mentioned, the Dallas and LA game. So how have the Cowboys been able to get to this point and stay 3-1 with all the injuries they've had, especially to Dak, and what a lot of people were saying was a really thin receiving core and all that?
Well, what's funny to me, two things that I believe is the main reason they're winning. One is, I mean, it would have to be play calling's part of it, but the main thing I think right now is just confidence. I mean, I mean, that's just my opinion, but like they have the confidence now, and it's funny. It's almost like they have more confidence now without Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
And which is kind of weird. And it's like they rallied behind him, Rush, and it's like, I can't wait to see. I actually want them to go on a winning streak just so I can see what happens when Dak Prescott's ready to go. Like I want to see what happens. Like I'm excited. Like, oh, come on, man. Like, because then what if they take Rush out and they say, okay, we'll put Prescott in. Prescott comes in and they start losing. Yeah. Or what if they keep Rush and he keeps winning? Then what do you do with Dak Prescott after this season? Yeah. So, I mean, I can't wait to see what happens. I hope they go on a long winning streak just so I can see what Jerry Jones does. And it was funny, now that we have Amari Cooper, he came out and said that he missed Amari Cooper. It's just a money issue. And if it wasn't for that, Cooper would still be in Dallas. And it's like, well, I'm glad we got him. So, I mean, I'm glad there was a money issue there. But, yeah, I really do think, a huge part of it is, like, confidence, man. Like, they just – and it's funny because it's like they almost have a confidence they didn't have when Dak Prescott was in. And it's like, it's weird to me because a lot of people criticize Dak Prescott, but you remember when Dak got hurt a couple years ago that there was a couple games after that he was still had the most passing yards in the NFL because he had so many that year. It's like, we beat him that year, but it was funny. He threw up so many passing yards. It was insane. Like, I actually thought we were going to lose because he just started dropping bombs on us. And it's like, I mean, Dak's not a terrible quarterback. Like, if it wasn't for Deshaun Watson coming in, because I really do want to see what Deshaun can do. But it's like, if we were in a situation to where this season or next, we could trade and get Dak Prescott, I would be okay with that. I mean, if you put him around the right people, man, I mean, he's a really good quarterback, but man, I want to see Rush do good. I just want to see what Jerry Jones does, man, because it's exciting looking, like, wow, this guy that no one's really even heard of is like coming out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they're winning with him and not Dak Prescott. Like, how does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you think that confidence that you're talking about is mostly coming from, not having to rely on the quarterback to do as much and just like everybody else relying on everybody else's skill sets to actually come into play a little more?
It's funny because as you was asking that question, I had it in my mind, like, they're such different players, him and Dak Prescott, and it's like the game plan going into the games for defenses, like, they don't know how to. It's one of those funny situations to where you don't know how to game plan for the guy because you had so much game tape on Dak Prescott that you could just watch, several seasons, several games, and it's like with this guy, it's like
he's got 4 games.
Totally different. Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like, what's funny is I think that might be another part of it too, is teams, to answer your previous question, I guess I can add to that, is teams don't know how yet to prepare for him. So I think that that's making it a little bit difficult because, with Dak, you knew he could run the ball if he needed to and stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't like Dallas, but I like their situation and I like the story of Rush. You know what I mean? So like, I like his story, and it's cool to see someone come off the bench like that, and you're expecting, oh, okay, the season's over, because let's be honest, as soon as Dak Prescott got hurt, I was one of the ones that said, oh, well, Dallas' season's over, but now look at them. They have a better record than we do. So it's like, I mean, let me ask you this. Dak Prescott comes back. Let's just say he came back week 13, for example, and they're sitting at, 1 or 2 losses, and they're winning the division. What would you do?
I mean, they're paying him all that money. It's hard to keep him off the field, no matter how well Cooper Rush is playing. And I think at that point teams will have figured out Cooper Rush and will be a completely different conversation then. But I guess if I have to pick one or the other, I'm putting him back on the field just because you're not paying him all that to ride the bench.
But what's funny is if he came in and started losing after they had a winning record, people will
lose their minds.
Yeah, people will start cheering Rush. Yeah. Because it always sucks, and Browns have been there many times when the backup quarterback is liked more than the starting quarterback, because all you hear, like when we had Johnny Manziel, as soon as Hoyer would play bad, you'd hear Johnny. So it's like, I mean, I agree with the money situation, because it was funny. They were saying with Jacoby Brissett, if we would have won, we'd be 3-1, and actually 4-0 if we would have won the Jets game too. So if we were sitting at 4-0, they actually had a question on the I don't know if it was Browns website or where it was, but they said if Jacoby had us, let's say it was time for Watson to come back, and say we were like 10-2 or 10-3, something like that, and would you put Watson in? It's like, well, you have to because of the money. But if Watson came out and we lost like 3 or 4 games in a row, people all of a sudden is going to be like, yeah, give us Jacoby. So I mean, I honestly, man, I'm very excited though to see how Dallas plays with Cooper Rush, and it's like I can't wait. Yeah. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. On the other side of that game, the Rams have been struggling on offense this year. What's the problem there? Like, the offensive line issue? I've seen a lot of people point to that, but.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've heard some say it was Stafford's elbow, but if you look at Stafford's games last year, even though they won the Super Bowl, there were some games he played like trash.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think honestly, to me, it would be a 50-50 split between Stafford's play and the offensive line, to be honest, because Stafford he didn't light up the league last year. I mean, if you look at his stats, I mean, he wasn't like number 1 passing yards and stuff like that. So, I mean,
Yeah.
Tom Brady played better, and Tom Brady's older. So what's that tell you? I mean, Tom Brady's the greatest of all time, everybody says, but I'm just saying. I mean, you got a guy older than you playing better than you, and you won a Super Bowl. I mean, I don't know how to take that. I don't know how to process that. You know what I mean? So it's like, but Stafford, I I don't want to say this, but I'm going to. I kind of think he's barely over mediocre. I mean, I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback. I really don't.
He's definitely not playing like it this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like this year, he's definitely not top 10. And then like even last year, I wouldn't consider him a top 10. I mean, I was only a fan of his when Calvin Johnson and him were playing like in the prime of Calvin Johnson's career. It was exciting to watch Calvin Johnson mainly, but I mean, he's never really been one of those guys that I was like, wow, you know what I mean? So it's like, I really think it's a 50-50 split, just in my own opinion, that I would put half the blame on him and half the blame on the blocking. But yeah, I don't see them going back to the Super Bowl at all.
Yeah. I mean,
I would be beyond shocked if they went back to the Super Bowl.
I mean, yeah, I've been a Stafford supporter for years, but his play this year is just, it looks different in a much worse way than it has before. Especially maybe that elbow's coming into play because it doesn't look like he has the same velocity on his throws and everything.
Yep. And again, I mean, it's hard to say because we're not him. We're not on the field, with him and stuff. But I just don't know, man. Like if I was doing a draft, actually, I did do a draft. I did a draft at the beginning of the season, and he wasn't even on my radar for starting quarterback. I mean, not even a backup. So it's like he's not one of those guys that if he left, say next year we didn't have Deshaun Watson and they said we were getting him, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd be at like a 4. Like, okay, great. Like it wouldn't be that much excitement, man. Like I'm not. He had a lot of good years, and everything with Calvin Johnson and stuff. But now looking at him, he's not that guy anymore, man. Like I just, like I said, he had some trashy games last year, and I was actually surprised because I used him in FanDuel and stuff, and he would just stink. Every time I picked him in FanDuel, he stunk. It's like, man, I don't know if I'm jinxing him or what, but man, I would not bet anything on them going back to the Super Bowl. There's no way. Them or the Bengals. I would not. There's going to be 2 new teams this year.
Okay. Yeah. I would probably agree with that. I don't have 2 teams off the top of my head, but yeah,
right.
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't have. It's too early for me to tell you who I think would be in there, but I definitely don't see either of them teams repeating.
Yeah. Do you see their offense doing much against that Dallas defense?
I mean, there's one guy you got to get the ball to, obviously. Yeah. Cooper Kupp. Got to get him in there. But if they could shut down Cooper Kupp, all of a sudden your offense is different. I mean? So, I mean, you could say that about any team, but I'm just saying Cooper Kupp's like an amazing dude. And it's like you shut him down, all of a sudden you got a quarterback that I believe is a little above mediocre. And it's like, what now? How's he going to play? So if Dallas's defense comes out and they play him tough, put pressure on him, I think Dallas walks away with the win.
I think they need to get Allen Robinson involved more too. He's, I don't know what his stats are this year, but he's just been, he was my pick for, a rebound performing guy.
Yeah.
And he's, especially with the way that offense has been, and he's just been a non-factor so far this year for them.
I'm going to look real quick. I have for our picks next week, I think everybody picked out of the 4 of us, 2 of us picked Dallas to win, and 1 of us picked 2 of us picked Dallas, 2 of us picked the Rams to win. But I picked Dallas to win. I think their defense will be the difference. Yeah,
I think, especially with the rate the Rams are turning the ball over and the rate that Dallas forces those turnovers, it's going to be big.
You're going to hear Dallas's defense called out a lot for sacks and interceptions. I predict it.
Yeah. Especially if everybody's healthy on that D line going against I think a mostly backup Rams O line at this point.
Yep.
For a lot of, especially at that center spot, it's really tough. How about that Eagles Cardinals games you were talking about? Do you think Philly remains undefeated in that one?
Yeah, I picked them to win, but I was trying to think of a way for Arizona to win, but I kind of think the only way I see Arizona winning is if Kyler Murray has a flawless game, and then he can put up some decent rushing yards. So that's about the only way I see them winning, because Philly's playing really good ball, man. And it's like, I don't think Arizona is going to be that team to knock them off.
Yeah, I think Arizona's a little too inconsistent to pull that one off. Especially, I don't have a lot of faith in the Arizona defense at this point either.
Right.
So we covered your, kind of your thoughts on Green Bay's offense and Aaron Rodgers in that. They're playing the Giants in London this week. Giants are 3-1. I guess this is kind of a two-part thing. How much are you buying into the Giants at 3-1? And with the state that Green Bay is in, is that going to tell us more about the Giants at the by the time the game's over?
I think I would say win or lose, no matter who wins, who loses, you're kind of going to see both teams are going to be exposed in a way, because with Green Bay, if they lose again, people are going to question the receiving core. For example, no Devontae Adams. Is that the reason they lost? They got rid of this guy. They got rid of this guy. But if they win, especially if they get the ball, the running game going, people's going to look at it like, oh, they should have been running this whole time. So I think win or lose, they're going to be exposed in a good way or a bad way. The Giants, their offense is kind of going on Saquon Barkley a lot.
Yeah.
It's like if he gets hurt again, does that mean their offense is just going to tank? So, I mean, it's kind of like if Saquon keeps playing good, that I think the Giants offense is going to continue to play well, but they're like one of those teams that's like one injury away from like everybody being like, oh no, like kind of like with Dak Prescott, like, oh, the season's over. But I think both teams, win or lose, you're going to see the good and the bad from both teams, because I think Green Bay needs it more, obviously, the win, but the Giants, if they win again, they're 4-1, and then say Dallas wins, they're 4-1. That's all of a sudden, it's like that
division.
Yeah, it's a very interesting division, because then you got Philly. If they win, they're 5-0, and it's like that all of a sudden.
That's Philly next week, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think so. Yeah.
But it might be. So that's definitely. But I picked Green Bay to win. Actually, I'm looking at it, and if Saquon can have another nice game, I think they could pull it off. But I couldn't take the Giants over Aaron Rodgers. That's basically why I did it, because if Aaron is one of those guys that if you really need the win, he's one of those guys that you would feel comfortable with to take you for that final drive. So it's like even though he doesn't have Devontae Adams, it's like he's still Aaron Rodgers. You know what I mean? So it's like, but I would not be shocked if the Giants win. So I mean, it's one of those games where it's like I don't know what to do, but I mean, it's also not a shock if the Giants win. Yeah. But I think it would be worse on Green Bay if they lose, because everybody's going to question the Green Bay.
The sky's going to be falling.
Yeah, the sky's going to be falling. They're going to be like, oh no, they got rid of all the receivers. Should we be looking at a new coach? I mean, it's the same thing every year. But the Giants, if they win again, though, man, like, I mean, that's impressive. I mean, you can't help but say, I mean, that's impressive. Nobody in our on our show picked them to win the division. So
I didn't have them going for their fourth win at all.
Right, exactly. You know what I mean? But I mean, and it sucks because Saquon Barkley's such a good guy, and such a good running back, and he's like Christian McCaffrey. Like, you're just waiting for him to get hurt. I don't want him to get hurt.
What if it screws the offense?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you don't want him to get hurt, but he just became one of those guys that every time he gets tackled, you're like looking like, is he getting up? I mean, and that's sad. I mean, like I said, I don't want anybody to get hurt. I don't care what team you play for, but he has become one of those guys, like almost there with Christian McCaffrey. I think he's the main guy that everybody watches. Like, is he getting up? So, but man, that is a very interesting game. But like to go back to your question though, like I think in some ways, win or lose, whoever wins or loses, both teams are going to be there. Like everything's going to be open, and everybody's going to be criticizing winner or loser. Like, okay, well, they don't have these, this receiver anymore, or okay, well, Saquon had a bad game, so he's not as good as we thought he would be, and you know what I mean. So it's it's just one of those games that the loser is going to be just torn apart, because if say Saquon comes out has a bad day, they're automatically you're going to have people in like News Center and all these ESPNs and all these places saying like, well, he had a couple nice games, but he went up against Green Bay, and he maybe not be as good this year as we thought he was, and blah, blah, blah. And I hate that. A guy has one bad game, and they just tear him apart like, oh, he's not as good as we thought he was. And it's like, dude, it's 1 week.
Yeah, I mean, you can't judge anything off of one game.
But that is a very intriguing game, and so.
Yeah. With the other New York team, you got the Jets playing the Dolphins this week. Jets are 2-2 right now. No Tua. What kind of chance are you giving the Jets in that one?
I'd pick Miami. Let's see. I think 3 of us picked Miami. No, we're 2-2 split on that one.
Okay.
I got Miami winning because, like we said, Bridgewater is a decent backup, and I think if they can get the ball moving on offense and I'd put up some points, I think they could beat the Jets. Jets defense isn't that awesome, to where they could just come out and dominate. But I think the game rests on the shoulders of Bridgewater. I mean, that game's going to be won or lost by Bridgewater.
Yeah, I think not just I think the game's won or lost by both quarterbacks in that one because
I can agree with that. Yeah, because
Miami's got that defense that can cause some turnovers at the right time.
Yeah, Wilson, when he played last week, I mean, he didn't have great numbers, but I mean, I wouldn't be shocked either way. Whoever wins, it's one of those games to where whether it be Miami or the Jets, whoever wins, you're not going to be like, no way. It's like it's just one of those. I picked Miami because, like I said, I mean, they got enough talent on offense to pull it off. They got the defense, like you said, that could do the turnovers, but I don't know, man. Like the Jets, we lost to the Jets, so it's like it was blown coverage on one of the plays for us. But I mean, it's still, I mean, any team can win any Sunday. But in my personal opinion, I think Teddy will win or lose that game. I think he has more pressure than Wilson a little bit because, Tua had that hot start and then all of a sudden he's down. So everybody's, and especially in Miami, is looking at him like, okay, what are you going to do for us? Yeah. So, I mean, I think he has barely a little bit more pressure in that game than what Wilson's going to have.
Yeah. Okay. So lastly, I've been doing this for a couple weeks now.
Mm-hmm.
Been asking my guest for a survival pool pick at the end of the show. There's not a lot of pressure here because they're 1-1, so you're not really going to swing it either way.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had to pick one team that was a lock this week, who are you going with? I know it's not a great week to be picking anybody on this.
I'm not picking Cleveland.
I'm not picking Cleveland.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. Real quick, it was funny. A long time ago when I used to bet on games, like in pools at work and stuff, I realized very quickly if I want to win money, stop picking Cleveland. So, a lock, I would say Buffalo over Pittsburgh.
Buffalo over Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I think Pickett, he could come out and play well, but that defense, man, I think they're going to have a game plan on him that they're just going to make his life a living hell. Yeah. So
that's a tough first defense to start against. That's not very fair. And I think his only 3 passes that he missed last week were all interceptions.
It's crazy. So I think Buffalo's defense right now with Von Miller, man, it's going to be a rough start. You're going to see a lot of Najee Harris.
Yeah, Pittsburgh has some problems with that offensive line at times too. So,
but I would, and it was funny. It just popped out at me off my paper when I was looking at the games, and immediately I saw Pittsburgh. I was like, nope, that's Buffalo all the way. And TJ Watt's not going to be playing, so Josh Allen should have like 3 or 4 touchdowns in that game.
Yeah. All right. Well, Bud, thanks for joining the show. I'll give you a chance to plug your show for a second. See.
We are
where you can find you. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. That was my fault. We are Sports or Gibberish podcast. We've been around since February. I have a professional wrestler friend and her husband that told me, like, hey, you should, a lot about football and wrestling. You should start a podcast. And I reached out to a couple friends. They said that they would do it. Then we ended up bringing in a 4th guy. And he's kind of the idiot of the group. He knows literally nothing about sports. So we'll be talking about sports. And he asked if the Little Giants from the movie was the New York Giants grown up, if that helps you. So I was like, no, man, that's not the same. That's not how that works. Eli Manning was not in that movie. Yeah. So
there's no icebox on the Giants.
Right? Yeah, there's no icebox. But anyway, we're on YouTube, Sports or Gibberish. And we have a Spotify Sports or Gibberish podcast, and you can find us on both of those. And we are on Facebook, Sports or Gibberish page. So, if you guys ever want to check us out, feel free. We are sports/comedy. At least we think we're funny. So, we discuss everything, man. Like we'll go from like a topic. One week we were talking about wrestling because we have a lot of wrestling fans. Because, like I said, I'm friends with the wrestler, and it was funny. We were talking about wrestling. I brought up a story, and then I forgot what we were talking about. And I was listening to one of the guys talk, and he was talking about his mom and dad's sleeping arrangement when they were kids. And I'm like, what? So we will start on a topic, and we go out in left field somewhere. But we do cover some sports, and we do picks of the week, stuff like that. But if you're interested, man, like anybody, feel free to come check us out. And I had fun being on here, man. I'm gonna plug your show for you and everything, and tell people I had a good time. And you're a cool dude, and you got some knowledge, and it's a good show to listen to. So I definitely you send me some links and stuff, and when it's going to be on and where it's going to be on, and I'll make sure I tell people about it. And I'll mention it Tuesday on our next podcast, and try to help you get some more followers and stuff, man. Because you never know, So
I appreciate that. And everybody who's watching, I will get all that information that Bud just spit out into the end of this video and underneath the video. So I'll get that from him and have it available for you guys to go follow him. Great insights from Bud Masters, Sports or Gibberish. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.